Hey everybody, this is Soger. This is going to be my city-state tier list, and I'll also just describe strategies involving each city-state if it's relevant when I get to them. Before that, let me just get this out of the way. For people who are unfamiliar with me, I play single-player deity or higher difficulty, and my goal every single game is to win in the fewest turns possible. This is important because if you play a more casual game or multiplayer, these strategies or these rankings may not make sense to you because they aren't for the way that you are playing. This is all just, hey, will this city state help you win the game faster? Right, so now let's look at how I'm going to be ranking these city states. One, I'm only going to do our S, A, B, and C tier. S tier is in every situation, you should do everything in your power to get Caesarity of the city state. It is one of the most important things in the game. A tier is in almost every situation, this city state's going to help. B tier is you're situational. If your situation meets its needs, it will help, but there will also be situations where it doesn't help. And then C tier is going to be city states that the only reason to ever get Caesarity of them is for utility purposes, to do a levy war, to get early exploration, stuff like that. When I'm judging these city states, that's going to be judged by how good their ability is length of game, because there's plenty of city states that are very, very good at the end game, but that doesn't matter. The majority of the game is the early mid game, obviously. End game doesn't really have that much effect on the outcome. So it's going to be length of game, how important is their ability, what their ability actually provides, obviously, and finally the general use of the ability. Like, how often are you going to be able to use it? So something that is very situational obviously is going to rank lower than something that will improve every single game. All right, let's get going into the rankings. Militaristic city states are the second worst or fifth strongest, however you want to look at it. They suffer from a lot of the same problems as industrial city states. They're tied to a district that doesn't make a lot of sense to build in the ancient or classical era, the encampment, as it doesn't really provide anything that advances your game forward. And its production bonus is tied to just specific builds, and that is units. The one thing that puts militaristic city states worth early envoys a little bit more than industrial city states is they're just more likely to be building units, because that production applies to units universally. Whether they're military, civilian, whatever, you're going to get two production for each city state that you have an envoy with in the capital. So you're just building a lot more settlers and builders and scouts and stuff in the ancient era compared to districts or monuments. The first militaristic city-state is Akkad. Their bonuses, melee and anti-cavalry units, do full damage to city walls. What does that mean? That means that your melee and anti-cavalry act as if they have a battering ram with them already, even if they don't. So this basically makes siege units irrelevant. Because of this, this makes Akkad like the very first S-tier city-state. This city-state is absolutely game-changing. It makes an early city-state levy a conquering force every single time. Whether or not your opponent has walls are not is no longer a factor. The 4 or 5 melee units you're going to get from a city-state levy will be enough to take the city. It just makes early conquest so much easier. Plus, this carries in through the entire length of the game. It makes it so that when you're conquering rival civilizations, if you fire off a melee unit in a conquered city, it can move on to the next city and start damaging your walls for heavy cavalry and other things to help take the city much, much faster. Really, the only reason you would ever not want Caesarity of Akkad is if you're playing a non-violent game. But as I'm playing for fastest victory, anytime that you're sort of going away from a non-min-max, non-perfect strategy, I'm not really going to factor that in, because you've already decided decided to play a non-perfect way. So that's on you. And in almost every case, you're better off conquering cities, even if it's just to pillage and raise them, than to not. So Akkad S tier, this ability is absolutely game changing. The next military city state is Grenada, and their ability is you get the access to the Alcazar tile improvement, which provides two culture and science to 50% of the tiles yield. It also has a defensive bonus, but this is single player. You don't really need defensive or fortification bonuses at any point. I mean, I guess if you're being swarmed by barbarians, it could help, but if you're improving tiles for a defense or fortification bonus, you're not playing for fastest win. This I want to like this more, but the biggest problem with the Alcazar is it's not spammable. They cannot be adjacent to each other, so that means that you're able to get two culture on a tile, which is all right. In a best case scenario, if you spawn next to a wonder, you might get some science off it. But for most of the game, you're going to have no control over the tile appeal. And by the time that you have access to stuff that can increase the appeal of tiles, the minimal amount of science that you're going to get from this is now irrelevant. So this is basically just two culture to a tile, non-spammable, which isn't bad. Culture is the strongest yield in the game, and the early culture is great. If you find Grenada early, this is really good. It's a good improvement, but overall, I'm going to say the city state as a whole is just B tier. Like, two culture is nice, but I would prefer to have had like gold or housing or something to make this a growth or something that moves your empire more. Just science doesn't work unless you have naturally good tiles already, and that's really the only negative about it is you need a city that's performing well already to make this tile improvement worthwhile. Kabul is the next militaristic city state, and their bonus is your units receive double experience from battles they initiate. So if you are the aggressor in an attack, you're going to get two times the experience. This is another like top tier ability right here. It's going to help out every turn that you're Caesarian of them that you are at war, and if you are playing to win as fast as possible in science, in culture, even in the early game, you're going to want to be at war, pillaging pretty early and as soon as you can. This works really good with light cavalry, getting them to the single action point pillage promotion as soon as possible. This is just, once again, it's a top tier ability. Lahore is the next militaristic city state, and man, they've been on a pretty good run, militaristic city states, and here's Lahore to bring them down. This is one of the most disappointing city states. They have Warrior Monks 2.0 as their Caesarian bonus, the Nahang, which suffers from the exact same problem as Warrior Monks. By the time you can buy them regularly, they no longer are relevant. You can sort of game the system and beeline stuff to make them slightly usable by rushing military academies as soon as possible. But even then, you're going so far out of a best you or a best case tech path to do that that you're building your game around a subpar unit. This is just, I mean, if you want to play a Lahore based game, it's the best city state. Otherwise, it's utility only. It's going to be in the utility tier, C tier. Next military city state is Nazahami. I looked up the pronunciation, and that is as close to getting it correct as I can, so I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Their bonus is land and support units are 20% cheaper to purchase with gold for each encampment district building in that city. Now, even though it's not in the city state description of its bonus, that also applies to faith purchases with Grandmaster Chapel. That right there is massive because once you have a military academy, you're getting a 60% price reduction. And faith purchasing is already super cheap because there's one, a lot of faith pillages just in general. Two, seeing as faith is already reduced when compared to gold, the fact that there's so many faith pillages makes it super easy to get a very large army very quickly. Now, another thing that this city state bonus has going for it is the AI likes to build encampments, and they generally have the encampment buildings built. Very often, the encampment is like second or third district in a lot of AI cities. Sometimes it's even the first. So that's really, really nice because my main issue with encampments is you don't want encampments in your territory. You want them in the territory that you're conquering. So the fact that the AI is going to build them for you actually does provide this bonus a lot a lot of credit in my opinion. The reason why I'm only going to rank it like I don't know, maybe a low A or high B. Once again, this is one where it's tough, and the reason why I'm taking points away from it is because you have to depend on the AI to have built the encampments and have the buildings for them. So if you run into a string of bad luck where the AI hasn't built any encampments or has built encampments but not got any of the buildings, you're not going to be able to fully utilize this without a gold investment. The next city state is Preslav. Their bonus is to be the worst city state in the game. You get +2 loyalty for every encampment district building. This is the worst ability. It's the lowest of the low. Just unless it's providing you a levy army for a war or early exploration, one envoy is good. Don't go any further. The next militaristic city state is Valletta, and their city state ability is you can buy city center, walls, and encampment buildings with faith. Those purchases will follow the conversion rate of production to faith, so it's a pretty reasonable purchase. Valletta. Uh, Valletta seems better than it is, in my opinion. Once again, if you're trying to win as fast as possible, you're not going to need walls. Even in a culture game, walls don't really provide enough tourism to really be worth the investment. In most cases, you're better off saving your faith and doing like a rock band or a naturalist, or just buying a great person with it versus buying walls. In like a science game, yeah, like maybe to get a watermill for the Eureka, but the biggest problem with this ability is there will usually be something better to spend your faith on. If you are using the Monumentality Golden Age bonus in any of the eras that it's available, you're much more likely to be spending your faith on settlers, builders, and traders than monuments and granaries, obviously. If you're not playing a faith-based game, you might still be running a moksha to eventually buy your spaceport with the 3,000 faith. I want to like Valletta because I generally play a very faith-heavy game, but every time I find them, I'm excited, but then I realize I never used the ability like much out of the ancient era, and even then, even if I'm playing like a Russia or a Mali where you're generating a lot of faith in the ancient era, I reach a point where I realize, wait, I would be better off to just save my faith to buy settlers next era. I guess the this would work out in a game where you're doing like a free inquiry golden age bonus with a faith heavy civ, but in that scenario I would really question why you weren't doing monumentality at least in the classical era to expand. So this is going to be a B tier. I want it, I want it to be higher, but the more I look at my games, I never really hit a stride where I'm buying a lot of buildings with faith. The final militaristic city-state is Wollin, and Wollin provides great general points for land combat unit defeats and great admiral points for naval unit defeats, and you get 25% of the opponent's strength and great people points. This is a pretty basic ability. You go to war, you take out units, you get great people points. The biggest issue is great generals as a whole aren't really really super vital to any gameplay other than domination, and even then, you can usually get a tech advantage on the AI to make up the combat bonus you need to beat the AI. Like great generals help. I'm not saying that you don't want them, but they're not super impactful. And outside of like just a straight domination game, you should be able to push your technology fast enough that you could be dealing with the AI and getting combat bonuses the other way. Now, the problem is, great admirals, if the AI was more inclined to build naval units, I would actually have a much higher opinion of Wollin because it would be nice to get more great admirals because some of the mid game and late game great admirals are incredibly strong. It's just if you're trying to win a sub 200 or faster game, unless you're building harbors right away and in every city, you're never going to reach the great admirals that really matter. If the AI made like boats more often, this would be a much better city state. But as it is, it's a B tier. Like obviously it provides utility. Like in no matter what, if you have severity of them, you're going to see a bonus for it. But it's not really going to have major impact on your game. Obviously, if you're like Alexander, I would probably bump it up because he has the combat bonus on top of the regular Great General one. But I mean, that's so specific. So that's the end of the militaristic city-states. Thank you for watching my video. If you want to click the playlist, you can watch the other city-state categories and follow along for the other city-state categories I haven't finished recording yet. Thank you for watching, and bye.